Welcome. Along with our partners, Dr. Justin Peng and Dr. Martine Ferry, we're going to be coming to you on this podcast, talking to you about the differences between 2019 and 2020 within the hospitality and tourism industry. Obviously, COVID has affected this field profoundly. Dr. Peng is originally from Singapore. He's working in Hanoi, Vietnam for RMIT, an Australian university. Dr. Ferry is situated in Europe, in Lyon, France, at Institut Paul Bocuse. Both are scholars within the field of hospitality and tourism in particular. What's particularly interesting about this series that we're going to be sharing with you is that the scholars with whom we're partnering are situated in Asia and Europe. Here at the Niagara Global Tourism Institute, which is situated on the American and Canadian border in Niagara Falls, New York, we're going to be talking about these dynamics with respect to North America. So we'll be discussing in this series relevant topics that are really affecting the entire world. Obviously, tourism and hospitality is a global field, but what people don't appreciate is the patterns that take place on a global scale. The Niagara Global Tourism Institute is part of Niagara University, and we are a tourism research entity. My name is Kurt Stahora. I'm a professor within the College of Hospitality and Tourism Management at Niagara University. I also serve as the Niagara Global Tourism Institute, or NGTI, scholar, and I'm the Director of Research. We hope you enjoy this series as we discuss contemporary topics within tourism and hospitality, and we hope you stay with us. Thank you so much. Over the course of our quarterly conversations with you, we are going to use a few terms for baseline purposes. The three terms that we agreed to were ADR, which is average daily rate, occupancy, which is the number or percentage of rooms that are occupied at a given point in time, and Revpar, which is revenue per available room. These will be woven throughout each of the presentations, but it's important that you understand what those terms mean.
Hello, my name is Patrick Whalen. I'm the director of the Niagara Global Tourism Institute. We're part of Niagara University, and we're located in Niagara Falls, New York, USA, actually about 7 blocks from the Niagara Falls Wonder of the World. So if you see me point this way, I'm actually pointing to Niagara Falls. As stated earlier, we're going to talk about the differences that COVID has made on travel, hospitality, and tourism, comparing 2019 and 2020. A lot of what we're drawing upon is STR data, and we're appreciative of their contributions to us. In the United States, 2019 followed a good year in 18, but 19 was actually better. In 2020, the first quarter was actually even better. So we're heading in the right direction for sure. But then the bottom fell out in the second quarter. And the numbers I'm going to give you here are for the full year, so you can have an appreciation that even though we had a good first quarter, things dropped off rather dramatically. Revpar dropped off 80% for the year. Occupancy was down 64% for the year, and the average daily rate was down 44% for the year. The average daily rate for the year dropped from $132 in 2019 to $73 in 2020. In Canada, the story is much the same. Canada, I think, applied restrictions because of COVID a little earlier than we did in the United States, and that's reflected in the numbers. They started to see a decline a little earlier than we did in the United States. But nonetheless, The numbers are pretty similar. Occupancy was down 79% for the year in Canada. Revpar was down 85%. Average daily rate was down 30.5%. Quebec was particularly hit hard with the virus, and that's reflected in the numbers, especially in April. In April, the occupancy was down 89.8%, almost 90% drop in occupancy in Quebec in April. The Revpar was down 92.5%. In 1 week in April, April 4th, the occupancy got as low as 6.1%. 6.1% occupancy in the week ending April 4th in Quebec. For the total country, for the year, taking 1 week in December, in occupancy numbers, occupancy was 41.1% in 2019 for the country of Canada. And in 2020, it was down to 17.7%. So 41% down to 17.7%. We're going to talk a little bit about trends in the future. And I want to really highlight two cities in the United States that I think tell a story. One of them is New York City, which is 7 hours away from us here in Niagara Falls. And the other city is Niagara Falls, New York. The Revpar was down 80.4% in October in New York City. That's 30% worse than Niagara Falls, New York. Why is that? Well, we think it's because of Niagara Falls, New York being a leisure attraction, New York City being a business city. Niagara Falls, New York has obviously outdoor activities not too far from here. We're going to see Niagara Falls, you're going to be outside. A lot of hiking in Niagara Falls. New York City, when we think of New York City, we think of theaters, we think of museums, conventions, indoor dining, things that are indoors, and we just don't think people are comfortable yet being indoors. And that, we think, is a trend that we're going to see emerging this year. People are going to gravitate toward attractions that are outdoors, where they can be outdoors, camping and things like that, versus going to cities. We should talk about public confidence. We don't think we're going to get back to anything close to normal until there's public confidence. We don't think there's going to be public confidence until there's vaccinations, and most of us are vaccinated. And that's problematic in the United States and Canada because we have differing systems. In the United States, public health is primarily the responsibility of the states, not the federal government. And in Canada, public health is the responsibility of the provinces, less so than the federal government. The federal governments in both countries set policies, but it's up to the states to enforce those policies and apply those policies. Things like scheduling and actually getting the shots in the arms of people is done differently, 50 different ways in the United States and many different ways, 14 different ways in Canada. So this is a problem that needs to be solved because we're not going to get public confidence back until we get vaccinated. It's critical. Some good news, we think, is that we anticipate a bump. There's a lot of thought right now that thinks that we're human beings, we love to travel, and when we're confident that we can travel safely, there's going to be pent-up desire to travel, and there's going to be a little bit of a bump. In the long term, we're not seeing a return to anything close to normal, certainly not in the first half of 2021, and maybe not until 2022, because it's going to take us some time to get people vaccinated. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to do this quarterly. We hope you join us every quarter where we'll talk about trends that we see based on data from the previous quarter. Thanks very much.
Hello, hi. My name is Dr. Justin Matthew Pang. I'm a tourism and hospitality lecturer here at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, and I'm based in the Vietnam campus. I'll be giving you a short overview of what has happened in 2020 with regards to the COVID virus, and I'll be touching on some key gateway cities here in Southeast Asia and also with Hong Kong. So let me start off with telling you a bit about Singapore. Singapore has always enjoyed a very good occupancy. In 2019, occupancy was always in the 80s and the 90s. Revpar has always stayed steadily in the 150s, 60s, 70s dollars. It's generally one of the highest in Southeast Asia. But what has happened is that in February, on the onset of the COVID virus, occupancy dropped steadily to about 40 to 30%, and Revpar dropped to about 90 US dollars. And this trend continued to follow. And Singapore had its circuit breaker taking place during that period of time, and occupancy dropped even further to about 40%, and ADR was about 50 US dollars. However, in May, the Singapore started some stimulus package and wanted to promote staycations in Singapore. And what has happened is that occupancy went back up to about 70%, but ADR basically stayed at about 50 to 60 US dollars. So that's for Singapore. So I'll give you a bit of understanding of another city here in the Southeast Asia, which is Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur, basically, its occupancy is about 60 to 70% in 2019. Revpar is generally within 50 to 60 US dollars. For 2020, similarly in February, that's when COVID hit most of the Southeast Asian nations. Occupancy dropped to about 50%, and ADR was about $37 in February, and this steadily declined to about 20s to 30s percent in February, and ADR continued to stay very low at about 20 US dollars. Whereas for Hong Kong, occupancy for 2019 generally has been pretty high as well, very similar to Singapore in the 80s and the 90%. Revpar is generally very high as well, being a key metropolitan city. But with the occupancy in 2020, its occupancy is about 20 to 30% throughout the year. And Revpar has dropped dramatically. It's dropped to about 30 US dollars. I'd like to bring up a very important note of Vietnam. Vietnam actually has done very well. Vietnam has not been very much been affected by COVID, even though they had some COVID cases here. If you look at Hanoi, Hanoi generally had occupancy about 80% occupancy, and its Revpar is about 90 US dollars. But Vietnam was not affected by the COVID virus. So in Hanoi itself, occupancy still continued to be pretty decent at about 30 odd percent, and Revpar has dropped quite a bit as well, but they are at about 30 US dollars. And this goes the same for Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City has lower occupancy at about 20 odd percent, and Revpar has gone to its 20 US dollars as well. So if you look at the general trend of what's going on in the region here, it's very hard to say right now with a lot of movement control orders, for example, taking place in Malaysia. You also have issues with a state of emergency going on in Malaysia as well. So that will keep occupancy and Revpar low. In Singapore, a lot of the government has basically tried to boost up local tourism. They have come up with staycation packages for its local people to visit the hotels. They have given vouchers for the citizens to try some of the hotels, and they have also come up with new attractions. For example, the Jurassic Mile, located in the eastern part of Singapore, to get more of their people out to see the country instead of them having to travel. Having to say that as well, Vietnam has not been affected by COVID as compared to other countries, and Vietnam itself still enjoys a lot of travel within the cities. Vietnamese are still traveling from Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, and also going to Da Nang as well. So their air travel, even though they have suffered a bit in terms of financial losses in their projected revenues, they are still doing well because they have a very strong local economy. And generally, moving forward as well, Tet holidays around the corner, we believe that occupancy and Revpar will pick up. As for Hong Kong, I believe that Hong Kong would continue to face problems because the government has cut subsidies for the tourist attractions and the hotels. And I believe without any stimulus package from the government, the situation in Hong Kong will worsen. And we'd like to see what will happen in the future when we have the next webinar on this, the outlook on this Southeast Asia and Hong Kong region. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, welcome on board this podcast. My name is Martine Ferry. As you can see here or here, I work for Institut Paul Bocuse, which is a hotel school based in France, Lyon. I run a master program, a joint program that we have with EM Lyon Business School. I'm here to, of course, represent Europe, and I will give you some updates and news about what happened in Europe last year. So, according to the latest communication from UNWTO, this crisis is 11 times more important than the one in 2009. We have lost 74% of international tourist arrivals and between 100 to 120 million direct jobs. In Europe, we have lost around 500 million tourists. Before the pandemic, we were in Europe used to a constant growing trends of our activities. Each year, despite the market share slowly but surely decreasing, the continent was #1 in terms of international tourist arrivals. Southern Mediterranean area led growth for decades. This is why the pandemic took us by surprise like everyone else. Travel to and from countries are still restricted, which is unusual in Europe, accustomed to traveling in a free mode within the Schengen area. Hence, the whole year was a disaster because the crisis had a major impact on travel and tourism throughout Europe, with overall ITA falling by 98% in April, same period in 2019. As of December 2020, inbound tourist arrival in EU decreased by 85%. Regarding more specifically the hotel industry, STR has estimated that for 2020, Europe's hotel industry has reported a 62% Revpar drop. Same thing for occupancy. It was minus 54%, and the average daily rate was minus 18%, and it was around 93 euros. What happened during the summer 2020 was particularly interesting. Europe has saved its summer seasons, but the patterns have changed. Europe, which is known for its cultural heritage and activities related to it, has experienced a shift. All museums being closed, European tourists have chosen to explore the staycation trends with outdoor activities. In France, for instance, the mountain area has reached 80% of occupancy rate in August, which is really unusual. Coastal markets in Europe and in many countries of the Mediterranean basin, like Spain, for instance, experiencing a strong recovery with a high percentage of positive pickup, which fell off for the rest of 2020, according to STR once again. But August was a strong month everywhere. But cities like Paris or London have faced a dramatic drop in terms of tourism flows. The European tourist, willing to have more recreational outdoor activities. So, what is ahead? Stay tuned and you will discover it. But more seriously, according to some experts, the European hotel sector will recover from the pandemic with domestic leisure leading the way. And this very important staycation trend. And then it will be followed by corporate demand with international cross-border demand picking up as airline restarts and people feeling, of course, more comfortable and about flying. And finally, the latest segment to recover may be MICE, as we have all experienced an online life. Digital has taken a lot of importance in the MICE segment. Some growing trends will still drive the demand. Recreational outdoor activities, as I mentioned, will remain on top, with a strong emphasis on regenerative travel. This trend will be driven by the willingness of the tourist to be close to the nature. And this trend of regenerative travel has a great future in Europe. But once again, stay tuned. We will come back and we will tell you more about the latest trends during the next podcast. Bye-bye. Au revoir.
Hello, this is Dr. Kurt Stahora, once again from the NGTI on the international border in Trek. I'm here to talk about some conclusions that can be derived from our experts representing each of the three areas that we're focusing on: North America, Europe, and Asia. Across each of the three areas, 2019 could be described as a banner year, up in fact from 2018, which was also a very, very strong year. Similarly, across each of the three areas, 2020 was dismal. Some of the numbers that jumped out in particular, according to our experts, was those surrounding Europe. Europe is the most visited area from all over the world. Asians go to Europe, and folks from North America go to Europe. International tourists were down by 500 million. It's an astonishing number. As a result of the lack of tourism, the lack of travel, 120 million jobs were lost across Europe. Once again, a very, very powerful number. As we look across the areas that we're going to explore, occupancy, Revpar, and ADR. Revpar across each of the three areas was down between 60 and 85% in 2020. Occupancy across each of the areas was down between 50 and 80%. The one number that jumped out in particular was in Quebec, which had occupancy numbers down in the single digits, which was astonishing. ADR was also down between 18 and 60%, keeping in mind that ADR is the daily rate at which hotel rooms are being offered. What we did hear is that there was some internal travel. When I say internal travel, there were people traveling within each country or within the countries. In the United States, that was a little bit problematic simply because each of the 50 states had their own policies and procedures regarding quarantining and where one could go and where one couldn't go. There were some states that even had made arrangements with other abutting states allowing travel between states, but even those were sporadic, erratic, and changed from time to time, not allowing for planning, which also affected rates. So keep in mind that these rates were astonishingly low, even though there was travel within the countries. We're going to continue with these quarterly updates and checkpoints, as it were, across North America, Europe, and Asia. We hope you continue to join us. And if you have questions, please put them in the question section presented to you, and we can get back with specific answers as they relate to those questions. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again.